Hello Acolytes, welcome back to another video, another reading wrap up. This one is for May of 2024. Per usual, as I'm gonna do my reading tracker page for May, go into voiceover for the reviews, and then I will do all of my updates on my book bingo, my book battle, all of my reading challenges. I'll do that at the end. So as usual, we're gonna start with our reading tracker, our book club page, and then we'll get into the review pages. Luckily, not that many reviews this month. I only read 5 books, so not that many. This is a little strange because it feels like there's a really big gap here, but the month had like a really weird outline. I think I've only ever, so far this year, it's only ever been 5 weeks, but we've got one day at the very beginning and one day at the very end, which is like a little annoying, but it's not the worst ever. It is what it is. Hey, I have literally no idea what happened to me with this page. This is not the calendar for the month of May. This is the layout for June's calendar. I also completely forgot to fill it in. I was just no thoughts, head empty, so I really need to apologize. At least I can try to fix it because I didn't fill in the reading date. Oops. Hang on a second. Hang on a second. Hang on a second. Shoot, this is not the right... this is not the right book for this month. That's the book for next month. It ripped. I don't know when my camera turned off. I hope it wasn't too long ago. I have headphones on because I'm listening to an audiobook right now, so I didn't hear the beep. I can't tell if this is a sticker or not. I'm trying to peel it, but... I'm sure that this is a sticker. I'm sure it's a sticker, but I can't peel it. It's weird having like this big gap here. I'm like tempted to fill it with stuff, but I don't think I should. How's that vibe? What do we think? Is it cute? I don't know how I feel about this one, guys. I don't have any more of my golden washi tape, so I can't really decorate in the exact same way that the rest of the months are decorated. They all have this same like golden washi tape on the edges. See? So maybe I'm just feeling that it looks a little weird because this is my first time without the golden washi tape. The guest list. On an almost deserted, possibly haunted island off the coast of Ireland, guests gather to celebrate a very high-profile wedding. The groom, Will, is a handsome and successful TV star, and the bride, Julia, is an ambitious magazine publisher who believes image is everything. As the wedding begins, resentments and petty jealousies begin to mire the perfect day. Everyone seems to have secrets, and the shallow facades they have are easily washed away by an unexpected storm. And then, someone turns up dead. The Guest List was my second book by Lucy Foley. I'm really enjoying the way she structures her mysteries. Typically, we'd see a body, get to know the victim, and build reasons as to why everyone is a suspect in their murder. However, Foley structures this mystery and the hunting party differently. We're told that there was a murder, but it isn't revealed who the victim was. Instead of building reasons why everyone would want to kill this singular person, we get reasons why everyone would want to kill everyone. I find this structure really engaging. In one moment I'll be sure I know who the victim is and who killed them, and in the next the author has completely changed my mind. She also writes about one of my favorite topics, which is rich people being miserable. It's like a major guilty pleasure of mine. She also writes about like everyone being horrendous alcoholics. Like everyone in these books is horribly drunk all the time. The guest list was a good mystery with some really good twists, and I found myself having to pause my audiobook, which was really well done by the way, and stare into the abyss as I contemplated new information. The characters are almost all horrendously terrible people, especially the men in this one. They're a group of private schoolmates who have never really grown up. In America, they'd be frat dudes, but I think Foley is British, so her stories are set there. Will is the leader of this group, and he's the typical golden boy trope. He's also the groom in this wedding. The frat boys were so realistically written in that way that a group of rowdy drunk men are. I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable and disgusted even just reading about these guys, and I can't imagine any of the women in the story feeling safe around them. I also really liked Julia, the bride. I think it's kind of rare to see female characters with rage issues, so she was a unique experience for me. Feminine rage is so often depicted differently, usually in a cold way or in like a screaming way, but Julia has that same destructive rage that is typically assigned to male characters, and I really liked that. Everyone in the cast has secrets that wind around each other, creating little knots that it's extremely fun to pick through. Even facts that I thought were just there to flavor the characters ended up coming back as motivators for the murder. The atmosphere was good as well. The island is beautiful but isolated, and I can understand why a storm would turn a peaceful place like that into a nightmare. The loss of the lights later in the storm also leads to some interesting tension, and it's capitalized on well. Several characters are around the murder weapon when it disappears while the lights are out, so even then we have multiple suspects. I was really intrigued to find out who the victim was. Foley likes to give readers a flash forward of when the body is found to instantly increase the tension and present the mystery, and then she flashes back to slowly unfold our characters and their motives. It's effective. I don't know if this is the structure in every one of her books, but it works. Having multiple perspectives is also beneficial for this kind of mystery because it creates a great sense of dramatic irony for the reader. The ending really got me. There were multiple twists in a row, and I didn't see the killer coming at all. I think I was lulled a little into a false sense of security because of the role of the killer in the story, but their motivation made perfect sense and the crumbs were there all along. I don't actually want to fully spoil who it was because I want you to read this one. It was good. I was telling my boyfriend about the plot afterwards and even he was baffled. I would highly recommend The Guest List. It's a great mystery that builds tension well and it culminates in a great twist. If you're someone who enjoys atmospheric thrillers, this is definitely a book for you. I gave The Guest List 4 stars. All the Dangerous Things. 1 year ago, Isabel Drake's life changed forever. Her toddler-aged son, Mason, was taken out of his crib in the middle of the night while she and her husband were asleep in the next room. With little evidence and few leads for the police to chase, the case quickly went cold. However, Isabel cannot rest until Mason is returned to her. She hasn't slept in a year. In hopes of uncovering a new angle, she agrees to be interviewed by a true crime podcaster named Wayland. But his interest in Isabel's past makes her nervous. His questions bring up uncomfortable memories from her own childhood, making Isabel start to doubt her recollection of the night Mason disappeared, as well as second-guess who she can trust, including herself. My feelings about All the Dangerous Things are complicated. On one hand, I think that very little actually happens in the plot, but on the other, I did enjoy the book. The story takes place across multiple different timelines, I suppose. So when I say not much happens, I'm talking specifically about the current day timeline. Already I think I'm being confusing, so let me back up a minute. Isabel Drake's son disappeared from his crib 1 year ago, and Isabel has been doing everything she can to track him down ever since. I really like Izzy's tenacity. She isn't a character that's willing to sit around and do nothing while the police suspect her. She's constantly reaching out to police with information, possible leads, and suspicions, but everyone suspects her as the culprit. Isabel has also not slept since her son was kidnapped. I think that this was interesting, though I don't believe it was used to its full potential. Lack of sleep, like what Isabel is experiencing, can kill you. It can also cause you to hallucinate or go into rages, and Isabel says she's done these things in the past, but we never really get to see the consequences of her being so sleep deprived. She functions like a mostly normal human being for the majority of the book, and every few paragraphs she talks about how sleepy she is. That's basically the extent of it. You could argue that we see the consequences of the lack of sleep at the end of the story, but I think Isabel would have done what she did regardless of whether or not she had been able to sleep. The other parent is Ben, though he and Isabel are divorced now. We find out through our second timeline, which are the chapters that take place set 7 years in the past, that Ben was married when he and Isabel began to have an emotional affair. Then Ben's wife conveniently overdoses and dies. It makes me wonder a little bit about why Ben wasn't considered more of a suspect. From what we see, Isabel is only ever considered as the killer. We are in Isabel's head, so it's possible that Ben is going through something similar, but it doesn't seem so. Ben is also kind of a groomer. Not in like a underage way, but just in like a manipulative way. He specifically seeks out young women who have ambition, and then he manipulates them and locks them into a life at home. Ben is genuinely horrible, but Isabel isn't exactly a good person either. She knew that Ben didn't want kids, but when she felt him pulling away from her, she stopped taking her birth control and baby trapped him. Huh? That is an insane thing to have your protagonist do, and it goes largely uninterrogated by the narrative. Girl, that's assault. But Isabel sees no consequences for it, and she doesn't even seem to think it was particularly wrong. It's weird. Anyway, Isabel also used to be a sleepwalker as a child, and we get some chapters in the child timeline, I guess. She has a younger sister named Margaret, but when Margaret drowns in the bog outside of their house one night, Isabel is convinced it was the fault of her and her sleepwalking. Turns out, no, it was their mom who was apparently suffering with postpartum psychosis. The author mentioned that she did a lot of research surrounding the condition and was trying to be sensitive about it, but I'm not sure she succeeded. I don't know enough about postpartum to say, but I don't exactly feel sympathetic for a grown woman who drowned her 6-year-old and got away with it. Sorry, I just don't. The writing and atmosphere were fine. They didn't stand out in a notable way. I was really intrigued to see where the story was going, and I stayed engaged most of the way through. I think the pacing slumped a little in the middle, but not so much that it was a drag. There's sort of like the secondary mystery of what happened to Margaret to keep the story moving. The ending was good and the twists were interesting. The piece of evidence that caused the final arrest was foreshadowed really well, and I was actually really surprised about that. I thought that was really interesting. I appreciate the parallel between younger Isabel being a heavy sleeper, even sleepwalking, but current Isabel never is able to sleep. I get it. It's weird because I have a lot of complaints about this story, but I still really enjoyed it. I'm definitely rounding up a little. It's probably closer to a 3.5, a 3.75 than a 4, but I gave it a 4 anyway. This is a story about motherhood, ultimately, and how hard it is to be a mother. The mother is always blamed, etc., but I don't know. I see the theme, but these moms aren't good people, so the message kind of falls flat, that like it always falls on the mom, when these moms are actually bad people. I don't know. I gave All the Dangerous Things 4 stars. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Patricia Campbell gave up her career as a nurse to marry an ambitious doctor and become a stay-at-home mother. Her kids are ungrateful, her husband is distant, always working, but the one thing she has to look forward to is her book club, a group of mothers that are united by their love for true crime and suspense fiction. But when a new stranger moves into the neighborhood, Patricia's world begins to unravel. She is initially attracted to him, but when some local children go missing, she starts to suspect the newcomer is involved. She begins her own investigation, assuming that he's a simple predator. What she uncovers, though, is inexplicable, and soon she and her book club are the only people standing between the monster and their families. I think people have strong feelings about the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I hate that title, first of all, but I don't really have strong feelings about it. I didn't think it was amazing, and I didn't think it was terrible. I've seen some people speaking negatively about the portrayal of women or black people in the story. I can't really speak for the black community because I am white as the driven snow, but I think the portrayal of women was well done. Each of the women had their own personalities and their own voice, but the novel is about disempowerment. These women are housewives, and when faced with a threat, their husbands don't stand behind them and they bow to the pressure. The black characters in the story are further disempowered, and the white characters step away from the troubles the black community is facing because they are able to do so without consequence. It would be difficult to stand against their husbands and their community to help those who are more disenfranchised, so they don't. They only care when their own are threatened. I can understand some of the criticism. The story is about white women, mostly, and the black characters are killed and disregarded more than the white characters. I do think that this was the point, and it tied into the overall theme. However, again, I'm not black, so if those who are still feel like this representation was offensive, I fully default to them. Back to the story though, Patricia is our main character, and she's your typical suburban housewife. The book club she joins reads a lot of true crime and thriller books, so this is where my first disappointment comes in. Based on the title, you already know there's a vampire in this story, and Patricia is the first to encounter him in vampiric form. However, she does not tell her book club that he's a vampire until the 85% mark. So this is not a story about a group of suburban housewives desperately trying to figure out a way to kill this vampire. It's a story about Patricia trying to convince her friends that James Harris is a drug dealer slash pedo and get him chased out of town or put in prison. It's a little disappointing and not what we were promised based on the title. There's eventually some vampire slaying that goes on, and I really enjoyed seeing them all come together and get him in the end. It just takes a really long time to get there. Something else I wasn't really a fan of was a 3-year time skip in the middle of the book. Things have been escalating, and finally Patricia is driven to the edge. Her husband won't stand behind her, all of her friends have abandoned her, and even her kids are calling her crazy, so she makes an attempt on her own life. Directly afterwards, the story skips ahead 3 years, and Patricia has basically given in to all of the pressures around her. She's friendly with James Harris, our vampire, and her family are very close to him. It just cuts a lot of tension that the story was building. We essentially have to watch Patricia go through the same motions of convincing herself of the fact that James Harris is a vampire and getting all of her friends on board again. It's repetitive. It makes the novel like 410 pages instead of 350. As far as scares go in the novel, I think Grady Hendrix peaked way too early with the horror. There's like a raccoon scene about 15% into the book, and it is the best horror in the book. I listened to it and I was scared and grossed out and excited for more, but nothing really reached the same level of horror afterwards. There is a cockroach scene at 70% that literally had me in tears, though I think that's just because I have a phobia of cockroaches. I think most people wouldn't have found it as frightening as I did. I had my boyfriend listen to it and he thought it was gross, but he didn't really have any reaction beyond that, and he's like not a horror guy at all, so if it was frightening, he would be frightened. I just think I should have been more scared as the story went on, but I wasn't. There's another thing that makes this book contentious, and I want to talk about it a little. Slick's essay. A lot of people are saying that it was just done for shock value, and I don't know if I believe that. I really don't like reading about essay, and I try to avoid it when I can. Most stories that involve essay didn't need to, in my opinion, and I think the same of this book. It didn't need to happen. I do understand it, however. Slick is a woman who is extremely religious and has only ever been with her husband before. When she threatens James Harris with a photo of him looking forever young in the 1920s, when this book is set in the 1990s, he's insulted personally and he wants to get back at her and intimidate her. It makes sense that the way he would do so would be to assault her and threaten her. It's a show of power as a man, and I don't think something like this is unrealistic. I think James Harris is a narcissist, and he understands that this is how he can most hurt Slick. Contextually, it makes sense. I still don't like it. If you're upset about it, you're valid. I don't like reading about it either, but in my opinion, it is contextually valid within the context of the story and the characters. I think this book is fine. I don't think it was particularly frightening, but I have a pretty high tolerance. The writing was pretty good and the atmosphere was serviceable. I see what the author was trying to do with the themes and I found them relatively successful, but I would like to know what you think actually. I gave the Southern Book Club's Guide to Hunting Vampires 3 stars, but I give the title 1 star. It's too long. Last Days. When ex-detective Klein is kidnapped by a dark cult that believes amputation brings you closer to God, he's tasked with uncovering who murdered their leader. Klein is the only man who can do it because he himself has an amputation. Will he uncover the truth in time to save himself, take on the mantle of prophet, or destroy all he sees with a reign of biblical violence? I would have loved to have liked Last Days, but I really didn't. It was a totally fine experience, and it was short, so if you've got a couple hours to burn and like a cult story, give it a go. I just can't really recommend it. From what I understand, Last Days is 2 novellas smushed together. The first half is called The Brotherhood of Mutilation, and the second part is called Last Days. In my opinion, the first half is much better and more intriguing than the second half. There's a sense of escalating tension, though I think I dislike that Klein is only staying to investigate due to the threat on his life. I think what I was hoping for was more about Klein becoming indoctrinated into the cult. The psychology of falling into a cult is always the most interesting part to me, so it's a shame we didn't get to see any of that. The way the cult functions is also a little bit of a mystery to me. The author does attempt to lampshade some of it by having some of the characters call out some inaccuracies within the cult, but I never think that absolves the author of responsibility. The idea of an amputation cult is interesting, and Klein, who has a singular amputation of his hand, is considered a level 1. One amputation, level 1. However, if he had amputated each of his fingers individually, he would be considered a level 5. Though kind of a cheating level 5. But what if, after cutting off all his fingers, he had the hand amputated at the wrist? Would he be considered a level 6 or a level 1? I think it's based on the individual number of amputations that are done, not the number of body parts. But then why would one ever consider a larger amputation without going through the smaller ones first? Like, I could be a level 11 or 12 if I did all of my fingers and then both of my hands. It's not considered honorable, but what is the punishment for not being honorable? The twist in the first half about why Klein was brought to the complex is pretty good and interesting, but I really wish the first half of this novel was expanded and it ended when that novella did. I know I'm gonna put my little spoiler thing up, but seriously, spoilers. I can't explain the second half of this book and how insane it is without going into spoilers. Please, it's entirely incomprehensible, but I'm going to go into full spoilers because there's no other way to talk about this, okay? Thank you. So Klein finds out that he's being framed for the murder of the cult's leader by the cult's second-in-command. In order to not get shot by the second-in-command, Klein amputates his arm, part of his arm, and then escapes the complex, setting it on fire as he leaves. He thinks he's killed the second-in-command. The cult members want to track him down and kill him. As mentioned, Klein had to amputate his own arm at the elbow to escape, so he ends up in the hospital being questioned by a detective. When the detective leaves, a woman from the cult comes to kill him, but he kills her and escapes. First of all, it's the Brotherhood of Mutilation. I thought there weren't a lot of women there. It's specifically pointed out that there aren't a lot of women there. I don't think there's a single woman on the whole complex, and then we see 2 in the second half of the book. I don't know. Weird. So Klein is on the run with a recently amputated arm. I think it got amputated up to the shoulder because he did a bad job amputating it at the elbow. I don't know. He's on the run when he's taken in by a group of guys called the Pauls. The Pauls are another cult, but these guys all dye their hair blonde, and they all try to look exactly alike, and they all call each other Paul, and they all have a singular amputated hand. Their leader used to be part of the Brotherhood of Mutilation, but that Paul thinks that only the singular amputation of a hand is holy because that's all that was mentioned in the Bible, unlike the Brotherhood of Mutilation, who think more amputations is better and more holy. The Pauls think that Klein is literally Jesus Christ reincarnated. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. And they think that he's meant to go back to the Brotherhood and kill them all as a divine judgment day. They think he's Jesus Christ because he's survived a lot of stuff. Okay, I can't go into it. We're officially off the rails. The Pauls are such a strange addition to this story. I understand that Klein has to do something about the cult coming after him because they are never going to stop. But why does he need the encouragement of the Pauls to do so? They don't really help him besides letting him rest for a bit at their place and giving him some guns, I guess. Klein ends up single-handedly get it? Because he only has one hand. Sorry. Klein ends up single-handedly killing a bunch of the Brotherhood members, and then he goes to the Pauls, who he thinks are going to crucify him and make him a martyr, and he lights their building on fire, locking them all inside and killing them all. The end. You understand? Do you understand what I mean? The second half of this book is completely incomprehensible, ridiculous ravings. We're completely divorced from reality, and as such, it's not scary at all. It's kind of funny, but I wouldn't say it's good. I liked Evanson's writing, and I really like some of the parts of the world he's trying to create. I think that this could have been really good if Evanson had focused on a singular aspect of the story and fully explored it. The Brotherhood is so interesting, and there were some like pretty gross moments, but I think it fell a little flat in the end. If Saw doesn't really bother you, I don't think this will, so if that's you and you've got a couple hours, give it a read. Don't have high hopes though. I gave Last Days 2 stars. My Sister, the Serial Killer, though the cover slap. I'm sorry if I mispronounce any names. This story takes place in Nigeria. I'll do my best. So, Korede's dinner is interrupted one night by a distressed call from her sister Ayoola, and she knows what to expect. This is the third boyfriend Ayoola has killed in, quote, self-defense, and the third mess that her sibling has left Korede to clear away. She should probably go to the police, but she loves her sister and family comes first. Until Ayoola starts dating the doctor where Korede works as a nurse, Tade. Korede's been in love with him for a long time, and she isn't prepared to see him wind up with a knife in his back, but to save one would mean sacrificing the other. My Sister, the Serial Killer isn't a thriller or a mystery, so if you go in with that expectation, I think you're gonna end up disappointed. This is definitely more of a literary novel about the sometimes toxic relationships we can have with family. Korede is an older sister through and through. She's neat, successful, and she cares immensely for her younger sister Ayoola. This includes cleaning up Ayoola's messes, and her messes include dead bodies. Describing the novel like this misses out on the complexities of the story. Ayoola kills her current boyfriend in the first chapter of the novel, and then no one else after that. Instead, the story is about Korede's relationship with her sister and womanhood in general. Ayoola has extreme pretty privilege, and Korede is often forgotten or dismissed because of it. Their mother favors Ayoola, and it seems Ayoola never really managed to develop real feelings. Korede often mentions that she had to teach Ayoola how to react properly, or how to show the correct emotions, so it's very likely that Ayoola is some kind of psychopath or sociopath. She gets away with it because she's pretty and charming. I think that the reader could view Ayoola in two different lights. One, she could be telling the truth. Ayoola claims that the men she killed are controlling, possessive, and dangerous. She even claims that every kill has been in self-defense. Ayoola does have an almost siren-like draw upon men, and at times it was tempting to believe that she really was a woman in a corrupt system trying everything to protect herself. Or two, Ayoola is lying. She kills men when she becomes bored of them or she wants the thrill. I think that this is also entirely possible. The murders don't seem to affect her emotionally whatsoever, though they dramatically affect Korede. Their childhood was not a happy one, and the trauma that they faced could have caused Ayoola to develop a desire to murder men. I think that the book sways you towards the second opinion, but the conflict is interesting because Korede wants to delude herself into thinking it's the first. The men around her don't see Ayoola as a real person, so it becomes easy to believe that she's killing them for a reason. I think this is a book you can only really experience by reading it. I could go into like a spoilery section, but I don't think there would be a point. This is an extremely character-driven book, so telling you the plot won't help you understand it. Many people have already mentioned, but the writing itself is extremely well done. From what I've read, the author is a poet as well as a novelist, and you can really tell through the prose. It's not long-winded, but it's extremely evocative and memorable. It's some of the best writing I've read all year. The reason I didn't rate it higher was mostly because of the brevity. The book is only around 250 pages, and I think it could have been 50 more. Just as the story was really starting to escalate, it ended rather abruptly. I enjoyed the ending, and I think it meshed well with the theme and the tone of the rest of the book, but it was just too quick, so I gave My Sister the Serial Killer 3 stars. So starting with our stats page, same layout as usual, we just gotta decorate. Oh, you know what? Actually, I should start with the collage so I make sure that I don't accidentally use up some of my important decorative elements. I am gonna use this as the centerpiece. It's cute, right? And what else do I have here? I've got this little like planty looking one. I've got some butterflies, some scraps of text, of course, white flowers that I'm gonna use. I mean, not all of them, obviously. I've got some gardenias. I have a lot of stuff, so I'm gonna start with this like nice green patterned wallpaper. This image is just so pretty that it's really difficult to want to cover it up. I feel like it's starting to go somewhere. How are we looking? I like the idea of creating like this little bouquet at the bottom of the screen. Screen? Sorry, I'm an iPad baby. I forgot what this is called. Paper, bottom of the paper. And we'll do more butterflies up at the top. That'll be nice, right? So my little friends have decided to have a bit of a crunch munch. So if you hear some crunching and or munching in the background, they're having a little snack, a tasty little dinner, one might say. But here's where we are with the collage. I think it's kind of unique compared to my other collages. I like it. I liked this center image so much that I didn't want to cover it up very much. So we've just sort of got our bouquet of flowers down here. And I added this little May tab off screen. It's a little bit off from the rest of my tabs, but I realize I only have one more to place here before I go back in the other direction. So don't comment about it, or do, you know, engagement. That's what they say. So now our last page is just our stats page here, and I'm gonna do the same format that I usually do. So that's genres in the middle, number of books read, number of pages read, average page count, and then format and location. Also, the lighting has changed. I'm sorry, it got dark outside. I went to the gym. I'm sorry. All right, I gotta do some maths. No! Guys, I put it on the wrong thing. I don't know, guys. I just don't know at this point. All right, on our last page here, we have our best and worst of the month, my ratings, and then we'll do a notes section per usual. Okay, I think we're done. This one feels a little weird to me. I never really like them as soon as I finish them, and then afterwards I'm like, ah, yeah, it's pretty great. So let's start as usual with our book battle page, Book Battle 2024. The best book I read this month was, come on, focus, focus, focus. Aha! The best book I read this month was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. Honestly, I don't actually think that The Guest List is like a super fantastic book. I enjoyed it well enough, but compared to some of the other books on this list, I don't really think that it deserves to be here. It was just kind of a cute little thriller, but it is what it is. I'm so excited. We're about to be in June. So next month, I'll put my June one here, and then I'm going to do a mid-year wrap-up, just sort of statistics and stuff. So during that, we'll decide who gets to move on to the next round. I'm very excited. We'll get to decide actually who goes all the way to the semifinals here. So we'll be able to fill in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 slots. And then we'll have to wait until the end of the year to see who actually comes out on top. Next up, we've got the A to Z challenges. I don't think I actually earned a lot of slots this month. I definitely earned an M here. My Sister the Serial Killer. That is M complete. I get to put a little sticker by that one. And I also have The Guest List up here. So that's also G's completed. I think that's all of the titles for this month. Now, I don't actually know if we got any new authors this month. I'll have to check. We do, we have an E. Brian Evanson. That's all we've got for authors. I do have some hearts left. And there are other hearts, they're just not already cut out, so I would have to do the hard work of cutting them out myself. You know. Oh, also, sorry if you can hear my AC in the background. It's like 90 degrees right now. I usually film with the AC off, but it's freaking hot and I don't want to deal with that, so sorry. Next is my medical examiner's challenge. We do have some deaths in the family. This title is so long, it makes me so mad. It doesn't fit on anything. I totally missed a book on this. I'm so sorry. If you were screaming at the screen, I read All the Dangerous Things, and that goes here, of course. It just ever so slightly does not fit, but that's okay. Sorry about that. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. Looking good. We actually had a surprise entry in my Decades Club. I did not think I was going to get one this month, but I did. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires starts in the 1980s and ends, and the majority of the book takes place in the 90s. So I'm counting it for my 90s slot. Perfect. So I am still on pace, surprisingly. I thought I was gonna fall behind last month, but this one sneakily came in and got me a mark in the 1990s. So I'm not reading them in order, but that's okay, you know? Makes it a little more fun. I have some other books set aside for the 1920s, so hopefully I get to those this month in June. I actually do have a book to put into Dark Academia, finally. I actually read it last month. It's Wilder Girls. I didn't know if it counted as Dark Academia because it didn't really feel Dark Academia, but it does take place at a boarding school, and I don't know, that's pretty Dark Academia, I guess. So it'll go, it'll go. And I also have a new one to add to my horror subgenre challenge. Once again, the Southern Book Club's Guide for Slaying Vampires comes in clutch. Focus. There we go, perfect. Technically that one counts as gothic horror. I don't really think it counts as gothic horror. I don't know, it's not what comes to mind when I picture gothic horror, but everybody online was saying that it counts as gothic horror. I think it's because it includes a vampire. And vampires are kind of classic gothic horror. I don't know, it's hard to categorize these things. So yeah, we're making progress on Dark Academia and horror subgenre challenges. Next up, we have our bingos. We have book bingo and thriller bingo, and I do have some to slot into several of these. Oh, I would give the guest list shocking twist. It actually got me. It got me pretty good. I gusped. I absolutely gusped. So I'll give that to the guest list for sure. All the Dangerous Things, I don't know whether to do Begins with a Disappearance or Missing Person. I will put it in missing person. Getting close to a bingo. Oh, serial killer. Obviously, my sister the serial killer. Bingo! Bingo! Yay! That's not really a thriller, I don't think. But it's literally, it's got serial killer in the title. I feel like it counts. I don't know if vampires count as paranormal, so I'm not gonna put the Southern Book Guide in there. Also, because I don't want to put it in there. The title's too fucking long. Sorry, that was mean. I could also put that in Amateur Sleuth, but I'm not going to. I'm not gonna do either, because I don't want to. I can do set in a foreign country for my sister the serial killer. It's set in Nigeria, I think. Yep, that's all I got. But we got a bingo, woo! I don't know what I should do for that. Should I get like a little stamp? Maybe I'll get like a little stamp so I can stamp across. But I am still gonna be filling these in. I wonder if I can fill the whole board. Oh, my TBR. I fill this out as I go. Because I can't remember what date that I put things on my TBR list, so. But it's getting pretty full. It actually got so full that last month I had to glue in an extra page because I'm worried that I'm gonna run out of space. It's only June and I was coming up to the end of my original page here. So yeah, I have an extra page glued in here. I don't think I'm gonna have to glue in another extra page. Ah, books read, perfect. So there's a very real possibility that I'm going to run out of space on this page as well. So instead of doing what I did with the TBR, where I glued a page in the middle like this, I would just glue a page at the bottom and have it flip down if I needed it. That way I could only glue a half page if I needed to. I think it's probably really likely that I'm gonna run out of space. So next time I do this, I'll be sure to give myself 3 pages for books read and like 4 for TBR. We are good to go on this section. So we'll do a little flip through here. And that is it. Thank you so much for joining me for this May reading wrap-up. I am reading a lot more so far in June, so the next one might be a long one, but thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please leave me a like, and if you want to see more from me, subscribe. I upload most weekends, so I hope to see you next weekend. Follow me on all my other social media. I am After Plague pretty much everywhere. That's Goodreads, that's Storygraph, that's Instagram, that's Twitch, that's TikTok. And I'm After_Plague on Twitter. I have my own book out. It's a collection of short stories available right now on my website, afterplagueart.myshopify.com. Thank you again so much for watching, and I hope you are reading in this post-plague world. Bye!